I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch network. A number of media companies have filed motions with the Washington, D.C. federal court, Judge Beryl Howell, asking the federal judge to unseal records relating to Donald Trump's claim, his frivolous claim, but his claim of executive privilege, trying to get former top White House officials like Pat Cipollone, Patrick Philbin, Mark Short, Greg Jacob to try to stop them from testifying by asserting these executive privilege objections. So one of the things we have reported here at the MeidasTouch network is Donald Trump has lost critical motions where he's tried to argue that individuals like Mark Short and Greg Jacob couldn't testify to the criminal grand jury investigating the January 6th insurrection because of Trump's assertion of executive privilege. The Department of Justice was not taking any of Trump's nonsense objections there, and they filed a motion to compel the testimony of these individuals. So just to put it in a little more context, back in July, you had Greg Jacob, the former general counsel to former Vice President Pence. He testified before the criminal grand jury in Washington, D.C. And then you also had Mark Short, the former chief of staff to former Vice President Pence. They testified in July. But when they were asked questions, similarly to the January 6th, about communications with Trump and what Trump said, they said, look, we want to tell you what we know, but Trump is asserting executive privilege. We don't believe the executive privilege is valid, but we need a court order saying it is invalid, and then we can testify on all of our communications with Trump. You'll recall the January 6th committee, because they had to move expeditiously, they couldn't ask those executive privilege questions of those witnesses because those witnesses said, look, we need a court to resolve it, and a court had not resolved it yet. So when you saw Pat Cipollone and Short and Greg Jacob and these people testify, they couldn't be asked those questions on what specifically Trump had said to them. But the Department of Justice, their mandate isn't any defined by any specific time, just within the statute of limitations, which they're well within now for the felony crimes that they are investigating. And so they moved in front of the federal judge, who's the chief judge. Her name is Beryl Howell, who is overseeing the secret grand jury proceedings, and saying there's no executive privilege here. I mean, he's a former president, not a current president, so executive privilege shouldn't be asserted against the current executive branch engaged in a criminal investigation. And it's outside of any executive privilege. We're talking about January 6th insurrection crimes by Trump's campaign to try to overthrow the election. That's nothing to do with confidential communications that a president's supposed to engage in. In any event, we, the Department of Justice, have a compelling need to get these records. So Judge Beryl Howell let us have these records. And Judge Beryl Howell on, I think it was September 28th, ruled in favor of the Department of Justice and said, Mark Short, Greg Jacob, you can testify on those issues where Trump was objecting to and claiming executive privilege. And they did. And now the Department of Justice is saying, great. Pat Cipollone, Patrick Philbin. Cipollone was the former top White House counsel, and Philbin was his right-hand man, his deputy. Now you come in and you testify on those. And there's going to be big information there of what they communicated with Trump and what Trump communicated with them, which they could not have previously testified to. And so what these media companies are doing, I believe Politico filed one, New York Times filed a motion to unseal the grand jury orders and the motions that were filed before this secret grand jury. And there's a briefing schedule on it, and we will see ultimately if Judge Beryl Howell grants the motion to unseal these records. Now, grand jury proceedings pre-indictment are done in secret. There's a number of reasons for that. One reason is to protect the integrity of the investigation itself, so that the investigation can be done in privacy and so that information isn't leaking to people who are being investigated so that they could try to coordinate stories and obstruct. And also, because everyone is presumed innocent, as they should be, having names of potential people who are and what they're being investigated for out there pre-indictment until they are actually indicted, we try to avoid that, and that's why grand jury proceedings are generally done in secret. I'm oversimplifying there, but that's generally why. So how did I know all of that information if it was done in secret? Well, you could occasionally see docket entries and try to glean what the docket entry is actually saying by the title of it, or if there's an order and the date of it. And you also, there's so much activity taking place in the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. now. Like, there's a seditious conspiracy trial going on for the Oath Keepers, and a Proud Boy is pleading guilty to seditious conspiracy, and there's sentencing taking place here, and there's Bannon's trial taking place here, and then there's a Mar-a-Lago another grand jury investigating the crimes of Donald Trump stealing top secret records and hiding them at Mar-a-Lago and probably other locations. There's all this stuff going on. So reporters are in that courthouse every day. And they see people like Mark Short, the former chief of staff to former Vice President Pence, leave. And they see people like Greg Jacob, the former general counsel to former Vice President Pence, and people coming in and out. And then reporters work their sources and get a sense of, okay, this person showed up in July and they went into that room, and then they showed up in October and went into the same room again. Why are they going back into that grand jury room on July, and then like Mark Short went back on October 13th? So what's going on there? And by the way, October 13th is the same date in the other grand jury, the one investigating the documents stolen by Trump at Mar-a-Lago, that Kash Patel was in the other grand jury there, and he was allegedly pleading the fifth because he's a coward criminal, and saying fifth regarding all of the questions about Donald Trump stealing top secret records there. It's my opinion that he is a coward, and it's my opinion that his conduct is criminal in nature as well. I mean, the whole idea that he was there while Donald Trump allegedly telepathically declassified all of the records, and Kash Patel was involved in all the insurrection-related conduct. I mean, it's ridiculous, these people. But what we know is taking place is, because these grand jury proceedings are secret, the media is saying, look, we should get these orders, though. There's a public interest in having these orders because this would not really violate the grand jury secrecy rules, because we really just have a former president making frivolous assertions of executive privilege and rulings that were made by Judge Beryl Howell, the chief judge of the Washington, D.C. federal court. Oh, and then I should have mentioned, too, Trump then tried to appeal Beryl Howell's ruling to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, which rejected it. So that's why all these people testified as well. But we want to see these orders. Him asserting executive privilege, which he shouldn't have asserted, has nothing to do with grand jury secrecy. It's a frivolous objection. We have a right to know as the press under the First Amendment. We should have that right. And the privacy and pre-indictment issues that I mentioned earlier in the video don't apply. So let's see what happens. I think there's a chance that we could potentially get some of these records. Trump's motion and his assertion of executive privilege, which was rejected, the DOJ's filing objecting to the privilege and seeking to compel the testimony, which they succeeded in, Trump's appeal, Trump's what happened in oral argument. This is some big information to know. And look, I'm going to do another video on this too, but Trump is spiraling. He's out there attacking every judge right now, right? He's attacking the judge in New York, the state court judge who's overseeing the Letitia James, the New York Attorney General case there. calling him vicious and a communist. I mean, just ridiculous stuff. Then attacking the federal judge, David Carter, in Central District of California, who found the crime fraud exception applied to John Eastman's attempts to try to block turning over records. Trump just did another post on his social media platform talking about DOJ witch hunts and all of this ridiculous. I mean, this man is spiraling right now. He knows the walls are closing in. The walls are actually closing in, but the wheels of justice move. And here's one more point I want to make. Imagine if Department of Justice tried the case against Trump. They prosecuted him, but they did not get the testimony of Mark Short, Jacob, Cipollone, Philbin, Meadows, all these other individuals. They're going to Meadows next. I have no doubt about it. I mean, they're building right here. Executive privilege doesn't apply. Create the precedent. Cite that case to all these witnesses who try to assert it. They're moving up. It would be prosecutorial malpractice for a prosecutor to go through a process and to try a case and not have key witness testimony. It is frustrating that we had a criminal president. I hate to even call him that we had a criminal in the White House who was abusing and using all of these privileges that are supposed to protect a dignified office and using them to delay and stall. But you can't blame Merrick Garland for that. Merrick Garland's fighting to get these privileges taken away. You want to blame someone, blame the fact that people voted Trump to win in 2016, which is ridiculous. The people who sat on the sidelines, that's the issue. And we should blame the norms and conventions and the rules and the laws of executive privilege. And these privileges were intended to protect confidentiality of an office that was supposed to be held by dignified people, not freaking criminals and terrorists. But the DOJ is doing everything it can to get this lined up. They need to get it lined up to do their case. That's what they're doing. And hopefully we get to see some of it. But I'm okay not seeing it if it means accountability at the end of the day. These grand jury proceedings are taking place in secret. That's the way it works. Would it be great for us to have popcorn and watch it and fist bump each other when witness testimony? Yeah, that would be great, but that's not the process. It's a secret grand jury proceeding. It's different than what takes place at Congress, which is public hearings. But Congress doesn't have the power to indict. They have the power to refer for criminal prosecution, but they're about undergoing fact-finding to pass legislation to avoid situations, and they can make referrals. DOJ prosecutorial. And DOJ's doing it. Look, DOJ just prosecuted an ex-Capitol Police officer who wrote a Facebook message to an insurrectionist to remove a post bragging about the insurrection. So no one is above the law with this DOJ. But they're building the case. That's what's happening. They're building the case. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit the subscribe button. We're on our way to 1 million subscribers. With your support, please hit the subscribe button now. And in addition to subscribing, please check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Join one of the memberships there. There's exclusive content there, exclusive podcasts, exclusive merch. You could become an honorary producer of a podcast. You can get postcards from me and my brothers, behind the scenes photos and footage and more. But more importantly, we are not funded by billionaires or millionaires. Zero people. More people watch these videos than CNN and the fascist media. More people watch this, and we have zero outside funding. We are fueled by you. This is a community, not just a network. So please, if you can help out, you do lots of subscriptions to other things. If you can help out, don't worry if you can't, but if you can, that's a big way to help. Patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.